Hello everybody, Happy New Year and welcome back to Tech Tactics. I'm your host David James. In this video we'll be taking a look at the legendary NVIDIA GeForce GTX 980 Ti Hybrid, which was launched in 2015, making this GPU nearly a decade old. However, as you can see from the card displayed on the screen, it is not the original version. The original model featured a 120mm radiator, but after a few years the pump on the card failed. So, to resolve this issue, I used the NZXT Kraken G12 GPU mounting kit, which is essentially a bracket that allowed me to attach a Corsair 240mm AIO cooler from around the same time period. Let's dive in! But first, a message from our sponsor. Discount prices on Windows 11 CD keys. Visit g2a.com for all the keys you need. The first game today is Far Cry 6, set at a native 1080p resolution using the medium graphics preset. The game looks quite nice with motion blur and depth of field disabled. In my opinion, these two options should never be enabled, as motion blur simulates fast movement and depth of field mimics the behaviour of real-world cameras. Personally, in games, I prefer clear visuals rather than an effect that makes it look like a night out on the town. This graphics card boasted impressive specs for its time, featuring 2816 CUDA cores at a base clock speed of 1140 MHz. It can also boost its clock speed up to 1228 MHz and runs on PCI Express 3.0x16. And furthermore, it also has a TDP of approximately 250 watts. Testing for bottlenecking is crucial because while having a powerful GPU is generally advantageous, it can be ineffective if the rest of your system cannot keep up. This performance bottleneck can result in wasted money on an advanced GPU that isn't being fully utilised. In this case, it's not quite an advanced GPU, so we're getting the most power as we can out of that GPU. Specifically this time, it is the 980 Ti. Far Cry 6 runs well on this modded version of the 980 Ti. As you can see, the frame time graphic's pretty smooth with an average frame rate of 68 FPS and a 1% low of 55 FPS. This GPU is still decent for its age. The next game is Fortnite, which is set to a native resolution of 1080p with no upscaling or frame generation, as this can introduce lag. This is crucial because solid performance is needed for competitive games like Fortnite, where achieving the highest possible FPS provides a competitive edge. This graphics card is capable of running games released before 2020. However, for newer games, you'll likely need to lower the graphics settings to medium or low to achieve a decent 1080p experience. Additionally, you may need to enable some form of upscaling depending on the game being played. These esports titles don't require extensive hardware, allowing for frame rates exceeding 60 FPS at 1080p. To be fair, considering how much these cards cost, their performance is quite impressive. You can find the original version of the card on eBay's used marketplace for a buy it now price of £150. And it's almost in mint condition with its box. However, if you want to save more money, you could opt in for the blower style 980 Ti, which you can get for around £100 on eBay. That's a great deal for a card with 6GB of VRAM. If you're looking to lower temperatures for overclocking, you could remove the shroud, get a Kraken G12 and use an AIO cooler to achieve very low temperatures, as I have done with this one. It certainly makes a difference, allowing for better overclocking of this card. When Fortnite is set on the medium graphics preset and runs on DirectX 11 setting, we can achieve a respectable frame rate of 118 FPS and with a 1% low of 73 FPS. Now moving on to Red Dead Redemption 2. I still love this game, the visuals are still amazing, which definitely is one of my go-to benchmark titles because it's perfectly optimised to run on both low-end and high-end hardware. Additionally, this game can really push a 4090 graphics card to its limits. I'll have to create a separate video just for that. Now, Red Dead Redemption 2 is set at 1080p resolution and on the medium graphics preset with motion blur and depth of field disabled. I believe this graphics card for now is a solid choice for 1080p gaming. However, I want to emphasize for now because driver support for the 980 Ti will soon be discontinued, and as a result you should not expect any future optimizations for newer game titles once support ends. Now, Red Dead Redemption 2 benchmark time, but first I want to point out that because this is a modded version of the original GPU, take a look at the GPU temp, as it did not go over 47 degrees in the whole time I was testing this game. The GTX 980 Ti Hybrid uses up nearly 20 gig of system RAM to run this game smoothly. Additionally, the graphics card consumes around 180 watts of power, which is quite efficient by today's standards. Red Dead 2 achieves an average frame rate of 63 FPS and a 1% low of 54 FPS. Next up is Cyberpunk 2077. It's impressive what CD Projekt Red has achieved since the game's release. It now performs well on various types of hardware configurations. The 980 Ti GPU is based on the Maxwell architecture, which lacks support for advanced features like DX12 Ultimate, Ray Tracing and DLSS, all of which are becoming increasingly popular in games today. I cannot really recommend purchasing this graphics card in 2025 as it's nearly obsolete. Nevertheless, it has been a legendary GPU that has served me well for many years. I bought it in 2016 after its launch and upgraded to a new graphics card just last year, as many gamers probably have. Set on the medium graphics preset with motion blur and depth of field turned off, the average frame rate for Cyberpunk 27 is 66 FPS, and with a minimum of 55 FPS. Once again, this graphics card has performed reasonably well. Now let's test it with a more demanding and recent game. So, the NVIDIA GTX 980 Ti slightly modded hybrid version of the card has met its match with Starfield, set at a resolution of 1080p with AMD FSR 3 enabled. The game is effectively set to 720p and then upscaled to 1080p when configured to low settings with features such as motion blur and depth of field turned off. Starfield achieves an average frame rate of just 50 FPS and a 1% low of 42 FPS. I almost forgot, frame generation is enabled also. And as I mentioned earlier, using upscaling may improve performance, but it can also make the game look blurry. So, can the 980 Ti Hybrid still handle gaming in 2025? The answer is yes, it can. While it doesn't match the specs of modern graphics cards, the 980 Ti Hybrid is still capable of running some games at playable frame rates, even at high settings in some cases. Now, before we conclude this video, I'd like to mention that the original radiator was 120mm, but currently I have a Corsair H150 AIO cooler instead installed on the PCB. Throughout this video, the maximum temperature for this card never exceeded 50 degrees, which will let you overclock the 980 Ti as you can with these cards, just to squeeze that little extra bit of performance out of it. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more tech stuff. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.